What's up, Dragon Brood? Today, we have a real question we need to talk about, and why does Arena have digital-only cards? I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons, or maybe there's none at all, and truthfully, people want to know my opinion. I don't know why, but some people want to know my opinion, but truthfully, let's just talk about the specifics of them first, and then we'll come around to what I think about it. But I think this is a serious topic we can really get into, and it's on top of everybody's minds because of some recent stuff, so let's just go get into it. Alright, so as we know, this week there were some recent bannings to Historic, and honestly there's not much to say about that. They're cards that we knew should be banned. Tybalt's Trickery, Brainstorm, and Memory Lapse ending up on their suspended list, though honestly, if you're going to suspend it, just ban it. We don't want it anyway. I mean, really, we don't want it. Just let it go. I got so excited I banged my microphone there. Like, none of us wants this. There was another announcement that came along with that, and that was that for some reason we're going to have what they call print formats and live formats. And their print formats, everything will be similar to where it is in paper, but in their live formats, they're gonna have some digital only things. Like they're gonna rebalance cards. But here's the problem. I don't know if anybody really asked for that. Like, why do we need them to be different? And here's the thing. I gave people warning. If you come by my streams or other stuff, we talked about this. Like when we did that mirror format, you'll probably remember that, where they took cards of the last year that had been banned or whatever, and they made new versions of them to see if they would work and try to rebalance them. Well, there wasn't really a purpose of doing that unless they already had intentions to consider trying to have alternate versions online. But why? I mean, if the card is already unbalanced, we don't need it to exist. And the version that gets rebalanced isn't what existed anyway. So it's not like that was ever initially tested. It's just now we're making a thing that goes into that environment that's totally different than what everybody's played with or what everybody wants or likes, or already has a bad taste in their mouth because they got upset with it when it was the broken version. So why keep it around? There's no reason we need either version around. Like, the format can still be fine and function without it. So why have it exist if it's just going to be for bad feelings? And I don't really understand that at all. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other cards that are in Arena that are Arena only. And these at least make a little bit more sense because one, they're only available in best of one, but two, they are part of beginner product, right? Things that are there to carry you through the tutorials and into your first games. So you want people to be able to play with stuff that they've at least learned and whatnot, and that all kind of makes sense. You also want to have some basic parts available to make cheap quality beginner decks that people can learn from. No problem with that. And none of these are game-breaking, integral parts of any decks or anything like that, so I think those are totally fine. And honestly, I've even used them in some of the decks here on the channel for best of one stuff. So I don't have a problem with them. I think those are okay. And when we do that, that has a purpose. But then that brings up another point because, well, when we announced that we were going to ban these cards and we were going to make these alternate versions, there was no compensation back. Like, so far, every time something's been banned, you get replacement wildcards for those cards. Great. That came up, and that's a thing that happened for the banned cards. But one, it should happen for everything that's suspended as well, because you probably had decks that use those cards that you now can't or don't want to play because you had those cards in there. And what I think we have to always accept is that if any number of cards get suspended or banned, well, everything else attached to those technically got some amount of punishment anyway because those other cards are gone. So you may have already spent resources to get cards to play a deck that you no longer want to play, or maybe isn't as good or worth playing because this other card doesn't exist. So at the very least, we should at least give those wildcard compensation packages for those cards. Obviously, we can't know what all the other cards would be in the other decks or whatever, but at least for the cards that you're putting on the list. Now, some of you will say, well, then what if it comes off the suspension list? Well, that's the trick. Why do we need a suspended list? Just ban it and be done with it. If it comes off the list, it comes off the list. It's not like it's costing WotC a whole bunch anyway, one way or the other, to give up some 4 uncommons and 4 wild cards or rare wilds to somebody, right? It's so little in the grand scheme of things, it just doesn't really matter. But what about when a card gets rebalanced? I think that's just as good as banning a card, or at least suspending a card. And in both cases, we're fine giving wildcards to the users for that. The least they can do is give you wildcards for that replacement. I don't think that's unreal. I mean, it's a small thing and it's so much goodwill that comes from it. I don't know why you wouldn't do it. From a PR standpoint, it's a slam dunk. The only thing I can think of is that there's some type of coding issue. Like maybe if you take a thing where it's banned and people can't play with it, it's easier to just give the wild cards, but for some reason if the cards still exist in people's accounts and it's playable or isn't tagged a certain way, it's not as easy to give them wild cards for it. That's literally the only thing I can think of. I'm not sure what else that would affect. But hell, for that matter, I don't even care. If there's got to be a way to say, okay, everybody who's played a historic matchup in the last month, you all get wild cards or something. Like there's got to be a middle ground that's easy to solve for here and take care of all the people that would be losing these from their accounts. Because, I mean, yeah, sure, the cards became something else, but you effectively lost them. But even bigger than that is one of the biggest, most important advantages that Magic the Gathering has is its connection to paper Magic. Like it's the history of the game. It's the aura. It's all of that, right? Is why people come to Magic. So why kill your biggest advantage? When you start making a format online that has no connection to your other stuff, like you're already killing some of your advantage. So I'm not sure what the actual competitive advantage is. Like, don't get me wrong, maybe the programmers are envious whenever they see something like Hearthstone or Gwent or, I don't know, even Soulforge once upon a time, right? Like, maybe they saw whenever there was a problem card, it was easy for them to go and switch some levers and say, well, let's change the power or the toughness, or let's change the cost, or whatever. And you could balance a card. Well, great, that works for them. That's not Magic. It's just not. Like, we're in a whole different environment, whole different world. The game operates differently. The game has more aspects, more people, more things to take care of, more perspectives. Like, that's not a thing we need in Magic. We just don't. But I didn't like the idea of having historic sets that have digital-only cards to begin with, and now we're taking it a step further and just changing cards within the digital environment. It just feels like it's becoming a mess. And I don't know. I think just taking away your competitive advantage, which is that connection, that history across formats and platforms, like, why do that to yourself? I mean, they're obviously, I give them credit. There has to be somebody there who's smart enough, thought about this, sat in meetings, did the math. There's got to be a reason, but I just can't imagine that reason's big enough to overcome all the other rationale around this. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess the biggest problem for me is who really asked for this, right? Who needs it? Who wants it? Like, why is it a thing? Like, was the mirror thing like fun as an exploratory exercise? Yeah, I guess. But you also have the same people that say, we should have a format with everything that's banned all being legal. And then we go like, no, we don't need that either, right? We just don't. Like, there's always going to be somebody who wants a thing, but like, is that really what's best for? Kind of what's the meme, like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's sort of what this feels like. Like, we should just, like, it's almost even more bothersome when you think about the fact that we're spending programmer time to do these things and testers figuring out if these are balanced or work or whatever, when we have so many other things we'd want in Arena. Hell, I just want quality of life stuff right now. I'd like to not buy booster packs 1,000 gold at a time. I'd like to just put 10x whatever and take the 10,000 gold. Let me wipe out all my decks so I can start over instead of clicking them one at a time, right? And that's got to be way easier to program than rebalancing cards and everything else. It's just so many things like that. Like, I don't know why this is a thing. And I'm usually pretty lenient on stuff like this, but this is one that the more I talk about it, the more people I see talk about it, the more people I see complain about it. Like, I just don't understand. Who asked for this? Who wants this? Who needs this? I don't know. Feel free to let me know down in the comments how you feel about all this, or hey, if you're one of the people who actually does want this, let me know why, because maybe I'm just out of touch. But yeah, as always, like, subscribe, follow, share, all that other awesome stuff. That's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.